Hello, everyone. Welcome to Career Circle's Empowering Voices panel, where today we celebrate Women's History Month by highlighting remarkable women leaders who advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'll wait about a minute or so while you all join us to allow others to join, and we'll get started with our conversation very soon. But in the meantime, I'd love to see where everyone's joining us from. I feel like working remotely, it's always so cool to see how expansive and diverse our networks are. So if in the chat, everyone can drop which organization they're coming from or where you're based, I would love to see, just out of curiosity. And then we'll get started in just a few moments. And I know we have a jam-packed agenda as well. So today, it will be full of great discussion topics and points. So we will not have a Q&A, just as a heads up, but we would have Kimberly here sharing everyone's LinkedIn so that you can connect with us further and continue this conversation because it's one that will be ongoing. So super excited. Lovely. Well, let's get started. Welcome, everyone, again to Career Circle's Empowering Voices panel. My name is Nuri Montilla, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion on women leaders in DEI and the power of sponsorship. And before we jump into our conversation, let me briefly introduce a little bit about Career Circle. So as an Allegis Group brand, we are a workforce solutions company dedicated to closing the skills gap nationwide by connecting job seekers from underrepresented communities to employers all across the US. So through upskilling initiatives and DEI training, we really aim to break down barriers and create an inclusive workplace culture. And with today's panel, it aligns perfectly with our mission, offering a platform for the friendly faces you see here, our women leaders that will share a bit about their experiences, their insights on all things sponsorship. So they will all introduce themselves shortly, but together we're all here to acknowledge, celebrate, and amplify Women's History Month by recognizing their journeys as change makers that really drive empowerment within their communities. And we hope that all of you joining us today through this discussion will gain a deeper understanding of how to activate change, like truly activate change, either individually or throughout your organization through this power of sponsorship. So as we transition to introductions, I want to remind everyone that this webinar is being recorded to ensure accessibility for all of the attendees joining us, and that we'll see the recording later on. And we've also enabled closed captioning. So you can turn it on by clicking on the show captions button somewhere on the middle of your screen, the bottom center. And you can also adjust the settings as needed. So it will include settings for language change, colors, and size. And in efforts to be more accessible, we will also use descriptive introductions today to offer context and access to all. So I'll start with a little bit about me. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a Latina in my early 30s with brown skin. I'm 5'1" on a good day, and I have long wavy brunette hair. Today I'm wearing a black mock net sweater, or rather mock neck sweater, since it's a bit chilly here in northern New Jersey where I'm based. And I think I see a couple East Coasters in the chat, so you might be nearby also feeling the chill. And generally, I'm the partnerships lead here at CareerCircle, where I work alongside our executive director joining us today, Kim Sneeder, to really lead strategic initiatives supporting community partners like our nonprofit organizations and workforce board partners, with a goal of really creating equity through opportunities for underserved communities. So not only talking the talk, but also walking the walk in those efforts. So I'm super honored to guide our conversation today, but bear with me if my mind wanders between English and Spanish, you might notice, but I'll try to keep it all English today and be on my best behavior. But for Women's History Month, it really holds such a significant and special part of me as a first generation immigrant raised by a single mother, also surrounded by a tribe of such strong women who inspire me both professionally and personally. It's really a time to reflect on the paths paved before us by those women, and also a reminder of the importance of opening doors for others with intention and really paying it forward with intention. I think that's so key. So I know many of us are here today to kind of share the sentiment to continue to empower women with opportunity for more opportunities. So now I want to empower our panelists to introduce themselves. So let's start with you, Kim. If you can share a little bit about your role, yourself, and in the spirit of Women's History Month, tell us about a woman or a woman identifying figure who inspires you.
Thank you, Nuri. And everyone, how great is Nuri? So thank you for kicking us off. I am Kim Sneeder. I am the executive director, founder of CareerCircle. My pronouns are she and her. I am a white female in my late 40s. I am wearing very large glasses, tortoise shell, which I'm super excited about today, with an excessive amount of gold jewelry, which you can expect from me, a black shirt, and some fun artwork in the background, and a white and gold bookshelf. Very excited to be here for this discussion. And when Nuri posed the question about a woman that inspired me, Kelly Martin, who is a regional vice president over at Aerotech, is the first name that came to my mind. And she is the epitome of sponsorship. I found that she challenged me intellectually. She pushed me out of my comfort zone. And sometimes support looks like tough conversations to help you be your best. But most importantly, she brought me into every room that she was in. She highlighted me, she sponsored for me, and she advocated for me. And I often say I'm here today because of the impact that she made. So excited to continue the discussion and hopefully give back to others.
Yeah, talk about a great start. Thank you so much, Kim. We'll be thinking about her today. And I'll pass it on to Rocky, if you can share a little bit about yourself and those women that inspire you.
Absolutely. My name is Rocky Howard. I am the founder and chief diversiologist of diversiology.io. We are a content platform that helps organizations build high-performing, engaged, and inclusive cultures through DEI content and coaching and community. And I'm so excited to be here. Nuri, you are amazing. Thank you for leading us through this. I am a darker skinned Black woman. I have as close to a bald head as you can imagine. I have big silver hoop earrings on. I have big framed glasses that are red and burgundy, and I've got the red lip to match with a black V-neck shirt on, and a nose ring. So you can tell I believe in showing up authentically, and I really value my ability to be able to show up differently. I have so many women in my life who are amazing people who inspire me. Nonetheless, my three daughters, by the way, I identify as she, her, Black, Christian, Gen X wife, mom. I have 4 kids, 3 girls. But the woman that I'm going to call out today is Ray Pearson. Ray is the founder of Alpha Ray Personnel. And when I was but a wee bitty recruiter, and I am 55 and very proud of it. So grown women, come on, let's give a clap. This is what 55 looks like. Let's be proud of that number. But when I was a wee recruiter more than 30 years ago, as a Black woman in recruiting, I didn't see many people who looked like me. And at the time, Ray had her own recruiting company, and she really took me off her wing. So I was this little recruiter that reached out to her and said, I just want to let you know that I think a lot of you, and this is pre-LinkedIn and pre-social media, and Ray just embraced me and taught me the business and made spaces for me and called out my name and helped connect me to clients. And even now, every now and then, we still connect. So I just want to give Ray Pearson a big shout for leading the way for me and so many others.
I love to hear that. And thank you for showing up with authenticity. I really appreciate that. And thank you for taking the time to join us, Rocky. And Melanie, how about you? Would love to hear all things that you do at ServiceNow, inspires you, everything.
Absolutely. So Melanie Luget, I am, my pronouns are she, her. I am also in my mid 50s. I'm 54 years old. I am Puerto Rican, so also another Latina in the house. I've got kind of medium length, curly, dark hair in a signature mom bun. I'm actually a single mom, so that plays a huge part in my life. I also have on some pretty fierce cat eye black frames. We're all rocking the frames this morning. And I'm wearing a light blue blouse, and I'm sitting in my home office in San Jose, California, where it is very nice and sunny today. It's definitely spring. I work at ServiceNow, so I live in the software world. I've been doing product leadership for most of my career, except for 4 years as a vice president at Gartner doing HR technologies. But right now I'm heading future HR products at ServiceNow. So I work in our incubators, and I lead all of our future HR products, which is including a lot of products that various people within HR, as well as an entire employee population uses. And a lot of thinking goes into making all of those products accessible, making all of those products support diversity, support awareness and transparency and communications, and all of those things that a modern workforce really has to be able to do well. So that's what I do.
No, it's incredible. And I look forward to hearing a little bit more about that journey, Melanie, because I know it would inspire so many of those joining us today. But thank you all for those wonderful introductions. It's clear that we have some kick-ass women here. Sorry, Kim, if I can't say that, but I think you all are pretty kick-ass. But as we reflect on the women who have influenced us, I think it's important to discuss the significant role that sponsorship has played within our journey, because if you really think about it, our journeys are shaped by a collective, a cumulative investment by many, with some offering advice, others feedback, and more importantly, opportunities. I think that's where the true change in career advancement begins. And so I think a good starting point for us would be to distinguish between sponsorship and mentorship, where mentors often provide guidance and insights in personal interactions when you're in the room with them. But when it comes to sponsors, they really advocate for you when you're not in the room, as I think Kim alluded to. And so the data shows that unfortunately, we're seeing the reverse. Women are often over-mentored and under-sponsored, with only 13% receiving sponsorship compared to 60% that have mentored. So while mentors do, offer valuable advice, sponsors really advocate for your career advancement by providing those concrete opportunities. And so let's start there. And I'd love to begin with you, Kim. What qualities do you believe define a great sponsor, and why is it crucial to career advancement?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Nuri. And gosh, there's so many different directions we can take this. Listen, mentorship is important because we need to know how to do the job. We need that guidance. We need that feedback. Sponsorship is how you move up, because you can be great at your role, but if there aren't advocates out there telling your story and showcasing that experience, oftentimes people get lost. And I've thought about this a ton, where there's studies that say any level of difference, or you don't spend as much time with an individual if you're not in the room where decisions are being made. How do people know about it? Think about how many organizations where you have individuals in a room and they're sitting around a table and they're brainstorming who can do this job, or who has had an impact, or who has the skills. If there's not someone in the room that knows of you and knows of your experience, you're immediately, quote unquote, at risk, or you don't get in the room. So I think there's a couple layers. I keep it really simple, where I say a sponsor has to have a voice and be willing to use it. Okay, so first part, do they have a voice, meaning it's respected, they're going to be in the room, they can get you in there. But the second piece is equally as important. Will they use it? Because have you ever had someone that's in the room, but maybe they just got in the room and they want to keep that position, or maybe they don't feel comfortable pushing the limits or introducing a new person? That's not going to be a sponsor.
Right.
And the last piece I would say is sponsors for women can be male or female. I gave an example at the beginning of Kelly Martin, because deeply, deeply, deeply as a human being for the last 20 plus years, she's impacted me. Also, if you were to ask me the same question, I can name men that were in the room and advocated for me, and that's why I'm here today. So I just think it's really important that we don't always look at, is the person a male or female? Because if you look at how many females are in the room, we're going to be short on sponsors. Okay, right? So we've got to build that. But right now, who has their voice and they're willing to use it.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are all very important points because while we are emphasizing that sponsorship are those moments where opportunities will actually arise, they are taking a risk on you, right? They're taking a bet on you to ensure that the expectations and the value that they see in you is actually something that can be pursued. So thank you for those insights, Kim. But Rocky, I would love to hear your thoughts on the other side of things, on the relationship when it comes to being a good protege. Like what increases the factors and likelihood of being chosen for those kinds of opportunities?
It's such a great question because I'm sure all of us, I know I'm approached quite a bit where people will ask, will you mentor me? Right. And that's a step one. And even for mentorship, I have some criteria, right? Because what people have to understand is the thing that most of us value more than anything is our time. That's an investment for us. And we want to see a return on that investment. So a lot of times when people, and we promised that this was going to be real talk, kind of girlfriend talk, right? When people come to get mentored, a lot of times what they want is for me to make them feel better about themselves and the decisions that they're making, or for me to teach them something. And I have those types of relationships, right? I have never had anyone ask, Rocky, could you be a sponsor for me? So no, first of all, as women, we don't ask that question. And I think we need to do that a little bit more often. I also think we assume that our leaders and our managers are our sponsors, and that is not true. And it is more than likely not true. So let me just say those two things. So if you're looking for that type of relationship, first of all, you have to be aware of those dynamics. Secondly, you need to show up as someone who I want to use my credibility for. And that's what we don't tell you. That's what people will not say to you. People are not usually going to be cruel enough to go, you're not worth my time and you're not worth my credibility. But we think that sometimes, quite honestly. So when you are approaching someone who you hope that will be a sponsor for you, you need to have your stuff in order. You need to be really clear about your value proposition. You need to be really clear about what your skills and strengths and your superpowers are. And you need to make that clear to your sponsor, both through words and actions and output. Because when Kim talked about, you need to make sure that your sponsor has a seat at the table. Well, guess what? We can't get kicked off our seat, have our seat kicked from up under us because we are sponsoring people who don't live up to our credibility. And so, like, real talk, that's the piece that no one really wants to say out loud. It's the secret. But if you want someone to sponsor you, you have to do the work and make sure that you are worth sponsoring and that we're clear on why that is.
I'm obsessed with this conversation because this is the real conversations that people want to hear. Thank you so much, Rocky, for sharing those details. And I think with mentors, they usually there's different contexts of conversations and relationships for a mentorship and a sponsorship. So a mentor, mentee, sponsor, protege. So a mentor usually needs a more comprehensive view. You think like coffee chats, lunch dates, where you are as the mentee, you're sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, so that they can provide appropriate guidance to keep you on track. And then on the other hand, a sponsor simply needs to know that you're a rock star. You have to be a standout performer so that they can actually take a chance on you. Because to your point, in order to provide opportunities in the room that a sponsor is in, they need to remain in that room. So I love those insights so much. And I think something else that I like to highlight as someone that has been fortunate to be a protege to someone on the panel here, which I appreciate so much, Kim, Without demonstrating reliability and adding value, it's unlikely that someone will take a chance on you, because you really need to have that can-do, proactive energy to make yourself the easiest person to sponsor, right? And in those odds, your odds will increase, so
Yeah.
that you will be in a good place
Mhm.
to get one, right? So
Yeah.
for quick stats, only 8.8% of global Fortune 500 CEOs are women, which is insane, under 10%. And then beyond that, 23% of executive positions and 29% of senior manager positions are held by women. So these numbers naturally drop even further down for women of color and members of the LGBTQIA plus community. And so studies do show that a woman with a sponsor has nearly a double chance of advancing in her career, 45% higher chance compared to one without a sponsor. So as industry leaders, and Melanie, I'd love for you to lead this. I'm eager to hear about a time where sponsorship played a crucial role in opening doors for you as a protege.
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of a couple, so I'll pick one right now. So early in my career, I was a product manager at PeopleSoft, when PeopleSoft was the big HR thing. And our VP of product strategy, who I reported to, a woman named Jenny Lehman, it was my first job as a product manager. I was in my mid to late 20s. And within my first 6 weeks at the company, I went from only presenting in front of a handful of people to being on main stage at our conference, presenting to 500 to 600 people at a time, because she believed in me. She saw, like, you can be a face person, we can do this, like, you can do this, and gave me that opportunity, which kind of set me on a path to being able to become a spokesperson, being comfortable, stepping out on a stage, which can be terrifying. And I never would have done that or picked up that skill if it wasn't for her. And she's also the person, I forgot to mention it earlier, but to think about a woman that was really outstanding in that capacity. The team that she put together at PeopleSoft years and years ago, that was mostly women. Those women are now heading, all of employee workflows product at ServiceNow. They're heading all of product development and strategy and marketing, at Success Factors, right? Like the team of women and Workday, right? Their executives at all of those all came from Jenny Lehman's team at PeopleSoft, because she pushed us all and believed in us. So it was a fantastic opportunity. She's wonderful. So I'd say her. That would be my my big example.
Incredible.
Melanie, I just wanted to build off that, because you said something so powerful that really stuck out to me, which was how intentional she was about building leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got chills, and I think that's important, because I think sometimes why people don't have sponsorship is maybe they don't know those hidden traits, or they don't know those experiences. And I think being intentional as executives about getting to know people that you're gonna sponsor, and that you have those different dimensions of them, and it's spending time with them. It really is. So what a great example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. And I'd love to kick it off to Rocky. Can you share a little bit about your protege story and how you were able to initially connect with that sponsor? How did you manage to get on their radar?
I was really lucky that the sponsor who has done the most for was actually my manager too, right? And I'm trying to go back to like he was my manager at the time. And I will tell you, Mike Bagelman has been the person who has had the single most impact on my career. Now, let me just tell you, I wish Mike was here. He would tell you he would not probably consider himself to be my mentor. He's always, I can always talk to him, but Mike isn't the person that I call when I need comfort or I need support, etc. Right? But Mike gave me my first director job. Mike gave me my first VP job. Mike moved me from one state to another. And then when we were no longer working together in the same company, Mike referred me to my first chief diversity officer job. And Mike has been a speaker for my current company. And I think I would like to think that what Mike would tell you, because we had one of these kind of knockdown conversations. I was saying to him, he had given an opportunity to some people who didn't didn't step up. And I was like, well, this is our fault. We didn't give them everything that they needed to succeed. Like, we should have done this and that for him. And Mike said, I gave them everything that they needed. I gave them the opportunity. It was up to them. Look at what you've done. And that always stuck with me. And it goes back to this, when we're given the opportunities and our sponsors make spaces for us, and they intentionally make spaces for us, are we going to step up and prove them right? Are we actually going to lean into the opportunity? Are we going to, when we are struggling, are we going to say, hey, I am having trouble living up to this opportunity. Here's where I need help or support. Do we look internally? Do we do externally? Do we do everything that we can to make that opportunity work? And so one other thing that I want to say here, we talked about, someone mentioned that your sponsors don't always have to be women. And I think as women, we look for other female sponsors. We look for other sponsors as a Black woman that look like us. But the truth is, of that 8% that sit as CEOs, less than 1% of them are women of color that are brown. So if Melanie, Nuri, and I sit around and wait for a Black female sponsor, we might be waiting for forever. And so don't assume or force what your sponsor needs to look like. Mike Bagelman is a white man who has cleared lots of pathways for me, and I'm so very grateful for him. He literally changed the trajectory of my life.
Love to hear that. And I totally agree. You don't need to look for someone who looks like you or acts like you or comes from a similar background than you. And I find also that women in particular often seek out a collaborative or an inclusive leader that value pushback. And leaders often love it when that happens to be a woman in certain instances, to be a protege for them. But regardless of what your background is, I think the more diverse perspectives you can bring into a conversation, the bigger rewards that will reap, right? Because oftentimes, and I'll touch upon this later, a protege, a younger leader can give new perspectives to that more senior leader, and that will actually help the leader, the sponsor's career trajectory, which is amazing. And so thank you so much, Rocky. I love that story. As a protege, I feel many of us often need to give before we get in those instances. And you alluded to that, Rocky, because leaders are really going to evaluate if you can grow into a producer on their team or a value team member like they anticipated. So you want to, show up, come correct, because unlike mentorship where you're receiving that guidance, you're receiving that advice, it can be more so of a one-sided relationship. But as a protege, you're really delivering, you're really meeting and hopefully surpassing those expectations that a sponsor sees in you.
Yeah, I
And
will
so,
say that there's a flip side of that. So like Rocky's saying, like 100%, it's also not easy sometimes to know that you need to say no to somebody that's looking for sponsorship, right? So I have made the mistake kind of earlier in my career of sponsoring somebody who I knew very well in my personal life, who worked in the same industry and really advocated for them, and then it didn't work out. So how somebody is in their personal life might not be how they show up in their career. And, it was, I did not feel great about it, like, because I had put my credibility on the line, like what Rocky said. So, sometimes, especially like right now, tight job market, all of these kinds of things, there's lots of people, that are looking for, like, please help me with this, or please help me with that. And you can't always say no. You can't always say yes, and you also can't always say no. So sometimes it's also about capacity, right? And it's also about that belief in the person that is asking.
love that
Well, and I
point.
think it's such an important thing to say. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to add one caveat to this. There's so many people who are coming to us at this because it is a tough market, right? And if you're reaching out to someone who doesn't know you, never met you, etc., please understand what you're asking for. I think people I had someone not too long ago reach out to me and say, and I'm going to use a business example, right? This person reached out to me and said, we've just started this new company and you're connected with this person. And will you make an introduction so we can pitch? And here's what I want you to tell them about our company. Yeah, no, I'm not doing that because I don't know you from Adam. And I think the correlation I'm trying to make there is a lot of times this goes back to the sponsorship piece. If you want someone to sponsor you, I think you need to be very deliberate about how you show up with that person. Because I can imagine, Melanie, I've been in that situation. I bet Kim has been in that situation because we have big hearts and we want to advocate for people and we want to advocate for women. And I definitely want to advocate for women of color. But I've also been burned by doing that. And the impact to that is this. It's not that we're being mean. It's not that we don't want to use our privilege and power. But when I do that, and it goes bad, then it makes it very difficult when I come with the next person for people to trust me when I go, here, yes, this person is worth the seat. And then they go, oh yeah, well, we did that last time, Rocky, and that didn't work out so well.
Yep.
So it's not just important for our credibility, it's important for our ability to be able to continue to sponsor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Rocky, I think I keep going back to perform. As an individual, perform and have the data to support it and show up so that, because if the sponsor just leads with, they do a great job, or I've heard X about them, that's not even going to have the weight. Even if the sponsor uses their voice, it's not going to have the weight to do what it needs to do. It's got to be their skill is X, and I've seen them demonstrate it in this way, and here was the impact. See, that's the difference, because even if you have a sponsor with all the time in the world, which does not exist, to Rocky and Melanie's point, even if that was the case, and then they had a voice and they were willing to use it, if you have all of the pieces, but you can't give them tangible performance results, it's not going to do anything if they use it. So I always say that, like, show up. And Nuri, you had sort of alluded to it before, like the protege can teach the sponsors so much. My gosh, look at what you've taught me. Yes, that is so true. But show up.
Definitely. And I think the chat is blowing up. I love all the questions, and I know we don't have much Q&A time, but I did want to flag one. In the way that you all pursued your sponsorships, is there one piece of advice that you can provide a prospective protege on how they can go about that? And I think an important piece to also highlight is, have you all ever encountered like a challenge or a barrier in securing a sponsorship at all? How did you go about navigating that?
I think here's the thing. I went years without a sponsor. I'm just going to be really real. And in fact, I'd go so far as to say that there were people who I trusted, who I thought were advocating for me, who were actually detractors. And so the other thing that you need is a little bit of a truth teller. So sometimes there's your sponsor and there's your mentor. And Tracy J. Edmonds, author of Wild Hair, talks about truth tellers. And so if people don't tell you the truth about what you're missing or why they won't sponsor you, then they become a detractor. So I think that there's another piece in that. And so I found it really difficult for a long time. First of all, I don't know when I was growing through my career that we even had the language of sponsor. I was one of those same people who assumed that the person who managed me was my sponsor. So I think that's thing number one. Thing number two is a lot of times, again, it's about what we ask for and how we show up. So I think it's about having some courage to say, I'm looking for that next step and I'd like your support. Do you have the time? What advice would you give me? And being respectful of that space, even if that space is just counsel. I think a lot of times people assume that we have a lot of time, and I can tell you that we don't. And so sometimes it's about approach and how you show up. The other thing I would think is, in that same way, when you said, your protege can teach you, build a relationship with someone. This is a relationship. And if you're going to ask me to give you something that's very precious, we should have a relationship. And I think a lot of times people just want to jump in and be like, hey, all right, I met you. Rocky, sponsor me. I'm sitting back waiting for the opportunity. That's not how it works.
No, and it helps to your point, have a plan. This is what I want, right? Because a lot of times you're going after something and you want to get this to move with people that are above you or at a different company or employer or something like that. Because sponsorship doesn't just happen within a company, it can happen outside of a company. Like, one of the things that I've learned over time is that employers and companies, they come and go all the time. People move jobs all the time, but the relationships that you build can carry throughout your entire career. Like, I work very closely today with a woman named Gretchen Alarcon, who heads employee workflows business unit at ServiceNow. We were product managers together 25 years ago, right? And during the analyst time of my life, there was other people, right? So it's sort of like you build those relationships, who your North Stars are, who you'd want to bring along, who you're going to go to battle with, right? And you take them with you. So it's not, just at the company that you're at right now, like, figure out like who's going to be on your team, as you go, right? Because those relationships are the ones, that are going to get you through, for sure.
Definitely.
I'll be vulnerable and tell you what not to do, because I have a long list of those, because I did them myself. Earlier in my career, I don't think I knew the word sponsorship, but I did know who was in the room. It wasn't me. So I picked somebody only because the person was in the room. And what I failed to think about is, do we have the same values? Is that somebody that I could see myself emulating, that I want to learn from? None of that was present. So then what happened is, when we would have these calls, number one, I showed up so awkwardly. I wasn't comfortable. It just wasn't the right connection point. I didn't have a good plan because I couldn't be my authentic self. I mean, the whole thing was just a disaster, and I own all of it. And so what I learned in that moment is everything that these women are talking about, which is build that relationship with someone that you respect, right? And that's someone you want to get to know, and all of that, because when you have that mutual level of respect, it's a nice foundation to then do the work and all of those things. But hashtag don't do what I did. It did not work out.
No, and I think that's how you can kind of pay it forward, right? By sharing those experiences, the good and the bad, so that we can all help in supporting those relationships for those that are seeking it newly.
Just want to say that Kim definitely got over that, or we wouldn't know each other today. I know Kim because she approached me at a conference and asked to have lunch, right? And told me all about CareerCircle and sold me on it. And, I got her a meeting with our head of learning and development, so, like, she got over it.
But I love that. Go, Kim.
I was just going to say, so think about this example, because I have one with Melanie and Rocky. I mean, the women on this panel have taught me so much and inspired me so much. Like Melanie, I looked at what she was going to be talking about, and I was just so inspired by it. And so I had reached out to her, and it was for no other reason than to learn from her. And then awkwardly, I show up, and then she was going to have lunch, and I was like, I'll go with you, And so she was so gracious with her time. And again, it was such an organic way to learn from each other. And she has been amazing. And then Rocky and I were going to be on a panel together. I was so nervous. I had some imposter syndrome going on. She met me right at the door, and you would have thought we had known each other for 20 years. But she's never left my side since. So I share all that to say, when it's organic and genuine and it comes from a good place, sponsorship will grow naturally. If that's not present, it's not going to work.
Mhm.
It's such a good point. And what I was going to add to that, Kim, is that so here's the other thing to know. You don't know who's watching you in the small moments. And
Yeah.
so you don't know who's making decisions about whether they want to invite you into their circle and whether that's their inner circle, their middle circle, or their outer circle by how you're behaving, right? And so one of the things that I was going to say about Kim and I, the reason why we bonded like that, and we have been ride or die since then, is because there's a values alignment, right? There is a real values alignment. So we know we can have each other's back because we know that there is a values alignment. So we don't have to be in the same room together, because I know when I say Kim's name, I don't have to worry about whether there's going to be a misalignment of values, right? And she's bold, brilliant, and badass, and she did not need to have any type of imposter syndrome, by the way.
I love that. And that's in alignment with my next thought, really shifting gears here and focusing on the perspective of a sponsor. Can you all share briefly, because I want to make sure we have time for all of our other points, I guess an example of a promising talent you've sponsored and invested in to develop them into a leader, and what made that a successful sponsor protege relationship? It's up for grabs, so whoever's interested.
Sure. I can go with that one. So in this case, it wasn't a woman that I sponsored. It was a very young man at the time, member of the LGBTQ community, and so I gave him his first job. That was a professional job when I was working at Logitech in my 20s. I then advocated for him being hired at PeopleSoft, which gave him his first product leadership job. And then years later, he had lost a job that had involved a fair amount of bullying and discrimination ahead of time, lost the job. And I advocated for him at an executive level. Fast forward, I was at Gartner at that point and had a lot of influence in the industry at that moment in time. Advocated for him with an executive who had been on the fence about whether or not to hire him or not. My influence helped. He got hired for that job, and he's now the CMO of a major software company.
Wow.
So, like we definitely helped each other through our careers, and also ended up being personal friends, along the way, and I love him with all my heart. And, he credits me with a lot of what he's been able to do. So I would say that that's been, a point of pride in him and what he's been able to accomplish. Like sometimes they just zoom by you in the middle of the night and you just, feel good about it.
Yes.
Incredible. Do you
Yeah,
have an example, Ken?
Yeah, it's hard to name one person because I have been so blessed with amazing individuals. But there is a person that comes to mind who, probably 15 years ago, I had hired on our national sales team. Didn't have national sales experience, but if anyone knows me, I am all about skills-based hiring, and I knew that she had the skills to do the job. And over the course of our time together, it was just teaching and growing and learning how to show up. And one of the biggest things about her was what made her so powerful was her authentic self. And she was big and like bold and personality. And so many of her mentors had been trying to squash that because they wanted a navy blue suit and 4-inch heels and you speak this certain way. And part of that sponsorship was not only building her confidence to say, bring a 10 to me. Don't bring me a 3 version of you. I want a 10. But where the sponsorship came in was to make sure in that room that everybody knew that a 10 was what we were going to value. Because if I tell her to be a 10 and the room only will accept a 3, I'm going to give her great advice. That was pieces of it. She left the organization, but when I started CareerCircle, she was the first call I made. And it was, I don't know what the job is. I can't promise you where this thing is going, but I know I need you. And I look at where she is today. She's now heading product. She's heading marketing. She can do anything. that she puts her mind to, and she will do it flawlessly. So you tell those moments of impact and you talk about what the person gives back. She's impacted my life in ways that we can never cover in one webinar.
I
So
love that.
powerful.
It is very powerful, and studies kind of generally reflect that leaders who invest in talented individuals are more likely to get that next more senior spot, as I alluded to earlier, because it really propels them forward. Because think about it, you're learning from your protege and bringing in brilliant minds from different backgrounds and different SMEs in their respective places or spaces. So different perspectives only bring about different and bigger successes. So sponsorship is one of those bigger and best predictors for someone that will get advanced in their careers, both for the sponsor and protege. And so with that in mind, Rocky, would love to hear from you. How can organizations really encourage senior women or just leaders in general? Because we've heard a lot from your stories that it isn't always necessarily a senior woman leader that is helping and being a sponsor. It can be from a slew of different backgrounds. How can organizations go about going to their leaders and having them embrace sponsorship alongside mentoring? Because we are not downplaying mentoring either, but what strategies can be implemented to really foster those successful protege sponsor relationships?
Yeah, so I think it's about conversation and education, right? And I think it is a leader's responsibility to find the talent on their team and then to use their privilege to sponsor that. But we're not taught that. We don't know that. When you go through Leader 101, there's nothing that talks about being a mentor and a sponsor. We're still looking and learning as leaders on how to give great feedback, right? Which is another part of this whole piece. And so I think if organizations really want to double down on this concept of sponsorship, what we need to do is start to educate our leaders. And we need to educate our leaders on what good sponsorship looks like and how they do that. And we also need to, if we're going to do that, we need to not penalize them when they make mistakes, because they're going to make some mistakes, as we all talked about. And you can't kick the chair from up underneath them, because sometimes we're going to get it wrong. I mean, hell, look at the divorce rate in the United States, and you think we're going to get the rest of the relationships right 100% of the time, right? And so we have to learn how to do that and teach our leaders how to do that with courage, and teach them that it is part of their responsibility. And I think that's that transition between being a manager and being a leader, right?
Mhm.
Managers manage people, leaders lead people. And when you lead people, that is a very different mentality, and it's a different set of responsibilities. And you lead people not only up and through your organization, but you lead people where they need to go. And sometimes that is outside of your organization. It is a different mindset. So if I think about it and I think we want to change it, then we have to change the mindset of our managers to become leaders who are willing to sponsor.
Yeah, I'd actually even take it a step further. So I've spent a ton of time looking into this, especially, designing sort of future of workforce kinds of applications. I've spent a lot of time thinking about managers, and I think, managers should actually be evaluated differently than they are. Like, if we want managers to be true leaders, then there needs to be more transparency in a way to see who is leading, right? Like, whose team is getting opportunities, whose team are getting the promotions, like whose team are getting the development opportunities and the visibility and the coaching and who is doing that versus who is being a talent hoarder and not doing anything to advance the lives of their team, right? There isn't a way to really see that in a lot of the systems that are being used today. So there isn't anything there that's encouraging it from an external point of view. So in my mind, one of the things that should be critical in getting just managers of functions to start thinking about the development of their teams in a much more generous way would be evaluate them differently. Yeah.
And this is why I was obsessed with Melanie at HR Tech and found her and just wanted to learn from her. I mean, so well said.
Absolutely. And I would love to hear from you, Kim, as well. What do you think are strategies that can be implemented, to Melanie's point, both within the organization and the broader culture?
Yeah, one of the things that I would love to solve for, and it builds up what Melanie's saying, is like, I think about my example getting the role to lead CareerCircle, which was life changing. It's the most amazing role I've ever had. And the only reason why I have it is the two decision makers worked with me 20 years ago, and they knew skills that I had. And so when they started thinking about what it would take to build the company, they didn't look for someone that had built a company. They looked for the skills, and they called me. And so I was talking to them because, again, so grateful. I called them a couple months ago, actually, and I said, how do we solve for this? How do we have, to Melanie's point, the technology so that when those decisions are being made, it's not just, I know this person or I've had an experience. We hope for that. But in lieu of having that, how do we have the technology to say, this person has done X, Y, and Z projects, or they have performed this, and from that, here are the skills, and here's how they match up with that role. I would love to see sort of two parts. Number one, teaching people how to be great sponsors, encouraging them not just to spend time with people that look like them and they're in their current role and they're right beside them every day, because otherwise you will never break that cycle. Spend time with people outside, build great sponsors. But then also, how do we have technology so we can do this at scale? And those top performers get into the conversation, even if they don't have somebody in the room.
Absolutely. It needs to be kind of like an ecosystem that supports that relationship. And I'm seeing in the chat as well, different attendees mentioning that it goes beyond the leadership, right? It needs to be a culture that supports this. And it's not a one-way street. Sponsors want to offer something that will fill in a gap for someone while also developing those skill sets and organizational visibility. So thank you, Kim, for those thoughts. And thank you to all of the speakers. This conversation, I feel like we need a part 2, part 3, part 4, because it's so meaningful with all of the insights that you all are sharing. And it's been great to hear about your journeys and the common threads surrounding sponsorship and empowering women. And as we wrap up our conversation today, I think it would be a great, little bow to wrap around the combo to share best practices that our attendees can take away from this. So whether it's personal, professional, or at an organizational level, feel free to echo some of those themes that we discussed today. And I would love to begin with you, Rocky, if you can share a best practice for our attendees.
Show up, show up, show out. Look, here's the thing. I ask people all the time, when I'm thinking about opportunities, if I had to select you versus this other person, why should I choose you? And I would tell you about 80% of the time, people can't answer that question. You need to be able to answer that question. And if you can't answer it, you can't expect me to answer it, right? So you need to show up. You need to know your data. You need to know your stats. You need to know your value. You need to know your worth. It can't be emotional. It needs to be how you're adding impact to the business as well as who you are. So when I say show up and show out, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I would add, don't settle, right? So sometimes, and this has happened to me, I'm sure it's happened to everybody, you're in a situation that you can do all of the right things, but if you're not surrounded by the right people and the right culture, sometimes you need to recognize that, and you need to change your game, change your company, change your employer, transfer to a different team, and sometimes you need to remove yourself from a situation, that happens too, right? So sometimes it's also recognizing if you're in a situation that is not going to offer you growth, that you're in a situation where your manager might be a detractor, and that's going to make things extremely difficult. So sometimes you just have to pick yourself up and move too. So I would say also recognize when you're in a situation that's going to be tough to get what you need, where you're being undervalued. and don't be afraid to change it up. Don't settle.
That's real. And Kim, I'll pass it over to you to wrap us up with that question. What can we take away?
Yeah, thank you, Nuri. Number one, sort of your point of entry, do the work, right? Because as we established earlier, your sponsors are going to need to have tangible results to effectively sponsor you. But the second piece, and I cannot express this enough, do some introspective work, figure out what your values are. Because we talked about finding someone with your values, make sure you know what they are, check that, and then make sure they're aligned with your sponsor. Because here's the thing, if you play the short game where it is about a promotion or about a job, that's not going to be fulfilling. You find a sponsor and you do the work and your values aligned, you're not talking about one job or one promotion. You are talking about a lifelong relationship that will forever impact your life. The people that I have had as proteges, and then the people that have sponsored me, have impacted me far beyond any single event. So enjoy the ride, build a relationship for a lifetime. It's so powerful.
It definitely is. And thank you so much. This was such an incredible conversation. Like, I just want it to be an ongoing one. And I welcome that. I know previously all our panelists' LinkedIn links were shared in the chat for you all to follow them, keep up with all of the great things that they're doing in their respective spaces to promote for things like sponsorship and DEI, making sure that we are really driving change in our communities and organizations. And I want to extend such a heartfelt thank you to Kim, Rocky, Melanie for really sharing your invaluable insights with us today. They will undoubtedly inspire positive change in our workplaces, our communities, ourselves, and to our audience. Thank you for joining us and engaging in this important conversation. I saw all of the flowers being given to our panelists today and the topics that they shared. So thank you for being so engaged. And I encourage everyone to keep the shared best practices in mind and really put them into action. I think something that we highlighted through our conversations is that we have to act with intention at all times because we never know who's seeing what we're doing and how they can speak about those strengths that we may have that we first may not even see in ourselves that they see, and they can speak to it when you're not even in the room. So with that, whether you're in the position to sponsor or seeking sponsorship, remember the power of advocacy and building diverse networks. And our journey towards equity, diversity, and inclusion is ongoing, and together we can make a meaningful impact. So I'm wishing everyone continued success in their advocacy and their efforts. And until next time, take care and stay inspired. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Nuri. You're amazing. Thanks,
for having
Melanie,
me.
Rocky.
Everyone.
See you soon.